Greetings, true believers, it is I, Matt Hall, here once again with a Roundup video. That's where I take a few games that aren't quite fitting into the flagship series for the channel, Have You Played, and I talk about them in a more brief and condensed manner, because I think they're worth mentioning, and also I need to justify having held onto all this game capture footage. First up is American McGee's Alice. Now, I was playing the sequel to this game, Alice: Madness Returns, and poking around in the menu, I noticed there was an option to play American McGee's Alice. I didn't see this option mentioned anywhere online. I was really surprised, actually, and I saw Alice: Madness Returns on Game Pass, and I said, oh, that's cool, I've always wanted to play American McGee's Alice, I guess I'll settle for the sequel. Now, the sequel dropped in 2011, and it's a really good game that I will definitely be reviewing for Have You Played. As for the first game that came out in the year 2000, well, it's really showing its age, and it's extremely frustrating. As you can see, the game is a gloomy, sort of more violent take on the Lewis Carroll novels, Alice's Adventures in Wonderland and Through the Looking Glass. And of course, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that, yes, most people associate Alice with the Disney movie, Alice in Wonderland, but these are books from the 1800s, and there's been many different takes on that character in those settings. I'm normally very forgiving of old games. I don't mind much about, fuzzy textures or dated mechanics if the game is good for what it is. And this game is pretty good for what it is, but there's a lot of huge flaws in it for me that is making it way more frustrating than enjoyable to play through. Firstly, the combat is very frustrating, and it took me a long time to get a grip on it because the first few enemy encounters were so sudden. They actually dropped in behind me, and I didn't even have a chance to respond. Really, really strange design choice there. Secondly, the platforming is really, really awkward and very, very clumsy. Now, when you jump, you don't jump straight up, you jump forward a little bit, and depending on how high you jump, they'll also indicate how much further forward you move as well. It's really difficult for me to get a grip on how far I'm jumping, and there's a lot of precise platforming in this game, and in some areas, if you fall, you just go back to the beginning of that room that you just entered. And in other areas, if you fall, you go back to the last checkpoint, which might be 15-20 minutes of gameplay behind where you already were. It's really, really frustrating to be exploring these areas, not really knowing what anything does or how it's going to work, because the game doesn't give you much in way of, tutorial or context clues or anything really. You just kind of gotta go with it, and I don't mind that in games. I like discovering, I like cryptic bullshit in games sometimes, but this game is way too unforgiving with the checkpoints for how clumsy the controls are and how frustrating the combat can be. I might buckle down and try to just power through this one, but I'm not enjoying the experience at all. Aside from the visuals and seeing how the story is going to develop, it doesn't really offer all that much. And if I try to put myself back in the year 2000 and think about how this game would have felt then, I think I'd have the same frustrations, because in the year 1996, we got Super Mario 64, which had absolutely fine platforming for a 3D game. A few frustrating areas, a few sort of clumsy or difficult jumps throughout the game, but it wasn't the sort of thing where every time you had to make it through a platforming section, you were constantly frustrated and second guessing how your jumps are going to work. So, I don't know, the more I talk about it, the more I want to say, fuck this game. However, the sequel is pretty fucking solid. I guess they learned a lot over the 11 years in between games. Next up is Wilmot's Warehouse, which is a puzzle game that came out in 2019, and you basically play a little square person who has this giant warehouse. Every day there's a delivery truck that comes in, and you need to pick up the items, move them around and organize them, and then when your business opens for business, customers come to the window and they say, I want this product, or I want, X number of this product, and you have to bring it to them. I know how ridiculous this sounds, but when I first picked up this game, I played it for nearly 8 hours straight. Now, there were meal breaks and bathroom breaks and, walking around and feeding the cat and everything in between that, but I played it all day long, and it's so pleasant. Like, the music, the graphics, the way everything controls, the pacing of it, it's really a lot of fun. And it's sort of a tile game, it's sort of a puzzle game, but it's all on you to figure out how you want to organize and categorize your products so that you can then find them when you need to find them quickly for the customers. And as soon as I finished the campaign, I went right in and started a second campaign trying to build on what I had learned during the first playthrough. Depending on your performance throughout the game, you get stars, and every once in a while you get to cash in these stars for different upgrades or items or little bonuses that help you along the way. It's a simple game, but it really, really works, and I can't say enough that if you like puzzle games or just want a very pleasant, fun, easygoing gaming experience, you've got to check this one out. It is really, really good. Mirror's Edge is another one of those games that when it came out, I was seeing a lot about it. It came out in late 2008 for the Xbox 360 and the PS3, and it was also released on Windows a few months later in early 2009. In the game, which seems to be set in some kind of soft cyberpunk future, you're playing as a courier who uses parkour to traverse through the city, deliver packages, and avoid the blues, which are cops. To my memory, this game received a lot of praise, and looking online, it seems like most of the scores given at the time were like an 8 or 9 out of 10. People did like this game. To me, I never thought it had much style. It looks like an Apple store to me. It's very sterile, and everything is white except for the primary colors, which kind of guide you along your path and lead you toward your goal and help you find things that you can interact with in the environment to parkour your way through these courses. I just don't really like it. The game pushes you to go down a very kind of restrictive linear path when the idea of parkour is being able to utilize whatever, however you want, and just move in these unconventional ways. The game doesn't really give you that. You also get these cutscenes, which I don't know why, but the animation style just bothers me. I don't like anything about this game's visual presentation. I find it very off-putting. I got a few hours into it, and everything just felt very samey and bland, and the combat, I enjoy parts of it. I enjoy the timing in the combat, the reversals and weapon captures and things, but it just doesn't really pull me in. And the story also, again, doesn't really pull me in. It's hard for me to care about these characters. They feel like extras from The Matrix or something. I don't know. It just, none of it really works for me, and I don't think I'm going to continue with this one. Maybe I'm really missing out, but I don't think so. I will say it's interesting to see how certain elements that this game seemed to maybe present for the first time in gaming have definitely been adopted by other games. The sort of fast-paced movement and interacting with objects in the environment to propel the character forward through a level. I see a lot more of that in first-person games today, and I don't remember many examples of that came before Mirror's Edge. So I will say this game is likely very influential, but I'm having a hard time really getting much out of it personally. The last thing I'll talk about today is the single-player campaign from Zombie Army Dead War 4, or Zombie Army 4 Dead War. I don't know. Titles like this are very confusing to me. This game is a spin-off of the Sniper Elite series, the game where you can shoot people in the nuts and you'll get this nice big close-up cross-section of the bullets exploding their testicles. I'm playing this single player. I have to admit, I think the game would be a lot more fun multiplayer, but I don't have any intention of really getting into that anytime soon. I got a few hours into the campaign, and the shooting feels good. There's different upgrades and attachments for weapons that give you different sort of powers, like this lightning gun. The gameplay is fairly repetitive. You walk around and shoot zombies. The basic plot is that Hitler is somehow resurrecting a Nazi army of zombies and you gotta take them all down. I don't know, it's been done before. The game is not bad, it's just a little bit janky. Like, even this running animation, I feel like I'm always gonna topple over. I don't know, it just doesn't seem very solid to me. There's a lot of big levels, and while there are items to find and upgrade packs, and the game does sort of reward your exploration, there is way more empty space than is necessary in a lot of these levels. You kind of think, oh, what's over here? Should I explore this little crevice or go onto this train car? And no, there's fucking nothing in there, okay? There's maybe 1 or 2 collectibles per stage, unless I'm just not finding them, unless they're really well hidden. But it's, you know, it just feels like a little half-baked, and I'm also not so crazy about the fact that so much of the content is hidden behind a paywall. The game feels kind of cheap, and it's cheap. You know, it's cheap to do that kind of stuff. So I don't know. This game is decent. Could be a fun game to boot up with some friends, but for a single-player shooter campaign, it just doesn't have enough variety to keep me going past the first couple hours. And that's it for this edition of Matt's Video Game Roundup. Be sure to be on the lookout for new proper reviews from our show, Have You Played? They come out every Thursday here on the Hidden Machine channel. Be sure to like, subscribe, leave a comment, do all that good shit, and help us build this channel. Thanks to everyone who's been subbing so far, and I don't know, I'll be here playing more games and poo-pooing on half of them and giving proper reviews to the rest of them.